You're listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.
This episode,
we'll be keeping a close eye on things in FAB Facts.
We are finding out what little girls are made of in the Randomiser.
and Mark Woollard is back for his third and final part of his walk down memory lane.
Ooh, that's all coming up in Pod 119.
Ooh, the Gerry Anderson podcast.
Let's get started. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Gerry Anderson podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
Ooh, but it did get a bit camp there in the intro, didn't it?
Yeah, a bit carry on, wasn't it? Oh, matron, no. Yeah, let's not do that. No,
Okay,
that's a different podcast entirely.
Let's rein it in a bit. Let's switch from Space Sergeant 101 to Sergeant Major Zero, if we're talking in Terrorhawk's Zeroid terms.
Lovely boy.
So, oh no, that's gone the wrong way entirely.
Sorry.
Okay,
Sorry.
So Richard, this is the Gerry Anderson podcast. You're Richard James. I'm Jamie Anderson. Over there, crawling underneath my car to deal with a hole in the exhaust is Chris Dale, multi-talented. Doesn't just engineer the randomizer, but also engineers cars. It turns out. Thank you, Chris.
So it turns out. Amazing. Great.
This is the Gerry Anderson podcast, and we'll be doing all sorts of Gerry Anderson related things for the next 90 minutes, won't we, Richard? And what are some of those things?
Well, some of those things might well include some news from the Gerry Anderson universe, because there's always brand new stuff happening, and we know that very well by now. We might also be hearing from Mark Woollard for the third part of your interview with him, Jamie. Excellent. A little later on in the pod, we'll be hearing perhaps from the lovely Chris Dale, Randomiser General, for another edition of the Randomiser, whereby he sits down in front of a random episode of a random Gerry Anderson series and gives us his random thoughts and comments. We'll also be hearing possibly from our Podsterons, who've been emailing us in at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. They've been tweeting us and hashtagging us Gerry Anderson Podcast, tagging me, Richard and James, him, I'm Jamie Anderson, and him with the oily fingers, Chris Dalek. And they've also been posting on our Facebook group. And we might also, in a little while, be having a FAB Fact or two.
Him with the oily fingers. I mean, I doubt Chris has ever been referred to as that.
I bet he has. You don't know him like I know him.
Oh, all right, fair enough. Say no more, say no more. Now, Podsterons, would you like to win a little package of goodies? We did this a few weeks ago, and two of you won some bits and pieces for screenshotting and sharing.
Oh, yeah, great.
Well, I'd like to up the ante. Is that the phrase? I mean, it's a phrase.
Now.
So, if you would like to win a package of First Action Bureau goodies. Yes, hot off the presses.
Yeah.
You know, first time, new stuff, all very exciting. Mm-hmm. Then what I would like you to do is the following. I would like you to screenshot your screen on whatever device you're listening to of the Gerry Anderson podcast. Then I would like you to go to the First Action Bureau trailer and screenshot playing that. Then I would like you to post both images. Both images. To Twitter or Instagram with the hashtag Gerry Anderson Podcast, and I will pick one of you to win a lovely, vast prize package of First Action Bureau goodies, which will be delivered to your door in the next couple of weeks.
Amazing.
So screenshot both the Gerry Anderson Podcast and the First Action Bureau Podcast trailer. Post them to Twitter or Instagram, or both if you want to double your chances of winning, with the hashtag Gerry Anderson Podcast. And someone's going to win some goodies. So, I mean, you could pause us and go and do that now, or you can do it at the end. I'd do it now if I were you. Just hit pause, we'll wait. And
well.
Yeah.
Are they back? Is that
No, they're just typing the hashtag. Hang on.
Oh, crikey, yeah. Fat fingers.
That's a bit rude. Don't call me that.
Sorry.
Okay. So,
yes.
Thank you for doing that. You are now entered into a prize draw to win some goodies.
How exciting!
Good luck.
The excitement is building, isn't it? Ahead of the release of the first episode.
Well, it's so weird because obviously we have heard all of them now.
Yep.
So to us, it's like, well, they already exist, they're already out. But of course, nobody's heard anything other than the trailer and a few bits and pieces of teaser and stuff. So,
very good.
Yes, lots to look forward to, and don't forget, this all lives within the Gerry Anderson universe now that, Firestorm, Terrorhawks, First Action Bureau, they're all connected.
Yes, of course they are.
Which is all very exciting.
Yeah, great.
Richard James.
Yes, Jamie Anderson.
I think to kick us off...
Yeah. Wonder why you look so pale.
So rude.
Steam coming out your ears.
I think to kick us off today...
Yes.
That breaking from tradition, we should start with a fab fact.
Oh. You got me all excited.
It's my job.
Now, time for this week's Fab Facts.
Fab Facts, Richard. I've got a book of Fab Facts. I'll flick through that. You shout Fab and I read a Fab Fact where I stop flicking. Are you ready for that?
Born ready.
Here we go.
60s, 70s, 80s. Fab! How did I do?
Well... Because the thing is, when we used to do this and you could see what I was doing, it would have been easier for you to predict where I would flick to.
Yes,
but
I know.
I knew you were going to try and, do something there, so I slowed down the page flicking.
Oh, Jamie.
So,
right, what do you got for me?
Well, it's all in the eyes. The eyes have it, Richard James.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
do they?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes, the windows to the soul,
So
as they say.
they are. Even in puppets, it turns out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So, I mean, the eyes are pretty crucial to bring any non-human character to life, even a human, to be honest. And I think lots of kind of deep fakes and stuff, it's always the eyes that are the giveaway. Even in that, what was it? Was it Rogue One where they brought back Peter Cushing as CGI?
Yeah.
They'd obviously spent countless hours doing the little saccades and eye movements and stuff to try and make it look real. And even then, with all that, and it did look amazing, I'd say the eyes still give it away as just not being human. So getting the eyes right for the puppets was absolutely key. For Stingray and Thunderbirds, the AP Films / Century 21 gang went hunting for the best possible eyes for their puppets.
Right.
They found those glass eyes courtesy of a man with a very famous name, Richard James. Would you like to hazard a guess as to the name of the man who made the eyes for the Super Marionation puppets?
A very famous name. It wasn't Bill Gates, was it?
No, try one more time, and then if you don't get it, we'll give you the answer.
Was it Thomas Schaffernacker?
Schaffernacker eyes. Sounds very convincing. No, it was. It was, in fact, as many Podsterons will know, William Shakespeare.
Get out. Really?
Not the same one, not the Bard.
Oh, really?
But the Bard of Eyes.
Right.
William Shakespeare. So, Mr. Shakespeare, let's call him Bill, shall we? Provided the eyes for the majority of the Super Marionation puppets, and they had a really amazing kind of lifelike quality. They were quite expensive, very finely detailed, and I think they're part of the key of why the puppets of the Super Marionation era were so engaging.
Yes.
I believe that Mr. Shakespeare closed up shop in the 90s or the 80s, and a couple of people bought up a large stock of his eyes.
Well, okay.
Which have been used at various points on various puppet recreations through the decades.
Yeah.
Now, lots of people these days use Nissel, which is the current kind of eye maker of choice for non-human characters. But the eyes are incredibly important. Now, Richard Gregory, our dear late friend, who learnt all sorts of stuff from people like Christine Glanville and learnt how to make the puppets look really alive, brought something really interesting to us when we were doing Firestorm and other bits and pieces, and that was oiling the eyes.
Yes, right.
And oiling the eyes gives a kind of wet, lively glint to them and makes the lights reflect in a really nice way.
That's right.
Which brings them to life.
Yes, I remember doing the very same thing on our Space Precinct masks, oiling the eyes. Absolutely.
Now, on Space Precinct, obviously, those eyes are not human, certainly, for the Tarns and the Creons. So, I know the answer to this. Do you know how those eyes were produced?
How they were produced?
Yeah.
I've no idea.
Well, I can tell you because I painted some eyes
I thought that was coming. Yes,
that we used on screen, in fact.
Yeah, right.
In a couple of the jelly heads. So they would have, for Space Precinct, quite large, obviously the right size for the alien heads, Perspex hemispheres.
Ah, right.
Now, the eye designs were painted on the inside of those hemispheres to give the kind of glassy effect,
the depth,
rather than because if you painted on top and then tried to varnish them, they'd have a texture or whatever.
Yeah.
But the way you have to paint them, obviously, you have to paint the pupil first and then layer backwards in the reverse order of what you want to see.
Right,
So
of course.
It was quite
painting from the inside.
Yeah, it was quite a difficult thing to do, but they did an amazing job. Obviously, Christine Glanville painting a lot of those eyes, and Richard doing a fair few as well. But I thought they were really, really effective. And then Richard bringing his eye oiling technique to that. But that, I never look at the Space Precinct characters other than possibly Morgo, and think, anything's wrong with the eyes. The eyes are actually really engaging in the amount they move.
True.
How is that wearing an animatronic mask with those eyes whirring about so much?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned before, it was impossible to hear anything for a start because those little tiny motors, the minute they were switched on, they started to buzz, and every time the eyelids blinked or the eyes moved, you'd have the extra noise as well. I do have an eye fact about a separate thing. Wallace and Gromit. Now, their little tiny eyes, their little beady eyes they have. Do you know how they used to move those? Probably not now in the days of CGI, but in the early films and TV shows.
I think I know what you're going to say. Go on.
Yeah, little holes where the pupils are. And they used to use matchsticks to subtly move the eyes. They'd stick the matchstick into the hole and move it very subtly and then take their frame and then move it again and take their frame. But of course, black on black, a black hole on a black pupil is very difficult to spot on the screen.
Nice little non-Anderson fab fact there. Although
there you go.
So much inspiration for Wallace and Gromit came from shows like Thunderbirds, I think it's only fitting.
Yes.
Well, there you are, Richard James. I think we've had enough eyes in this.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Should we bring this one to a close? That's the end of this week's
Eye Fact. Yeah, great. Oh, I like that.
Not very good English, though, Eye Fact.
No, it isn't really. Of course, the one thing I didn't mention, and it's in the book, and I think I've mentioned this before as well, is when one of our actors on Space Precinct, Rob Thurtle, was having notes from one of our directors, Sidney Hayers, and he was playing, I think, a Creon or one of actually, I think it was a Tarn. And when, of course, they stopped the eyes in between takes, switched them off, the eyes would sometimes close. And Sidney Hayers, who was quite an elderly man, and perhaps didn't quite understand what he was dealing with, got very offended that he was giving notes to Rob Thurtle whilst Rob had his eyes closed. And he said, are you listening to me? Thinking he was sleeping through his note session. Rob had to explain, yeah, I am listening. That's just my mask.
Yeah, the mask eyes. My eyes are under here. Oh, amazing. Love that.
Anyway, there we are. So you're listening to the Gerry Anderson podcast. Now, there are a couple of things you can do for us. Subscribe to us now on whichever platform you're listening to us on. And then on the same platform, or maybe even different, or maybe even multiple platforms, why not subscribe to First Action Bureau too?
Yes, do it.
Why you'd do that, I don't know, but, you could.
Well, you might have multiple devices and you might use different podcast apps on those devices. So, yes, please do. I mean, the more the merrier.
Yes. And, of course, leave us a review, particularly on the First Action Bureau, as all the bits and pieces and the episodes start to appear. It will be lovely to see what you think of it. So do leave us a review and let us know what you think of both the podcast and First Action Bureau as it appears. Share us with your friends, of course, as well, so they get to hear us too. And email us at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk, like lots of people have been doing. Would you like to hear some emails, Jamie?
Not really, no.
Oh.
Of course I would. Yes, please.
Well, this first one is from Ian Clark, who says, hi there, Jamie, Richard and Chris. First of all, thank you for the podcast, which has, in the last year, become my bright way to start the week. The word family permeates throughout the show, not only because of Jamie's relationship to the great man himself, but the very close bond that clearly exists between you three guys. Oh. No idea what he's talking about there. But also amongst those who are lucky enough to be Podsterons. Ian goes on to say, when you asked to send in our versions of Gerry Anderson themes on instruments, I knew that this had to be the first email I sent to the podcast. UFO being my favourite show, although we've had a very up and down relationship over the years since I first saw it as an unnerved child in the 1980s, ennui as a teen in the 1990s, and the adoration from my 20s onwards, I thought I would have a crack at learning and playing a version of it on the piano.
Ooh.
Ian goes on, my musical life also brought me an unexpected Gerry Anderson connection recently and also allowed me to redress a little imbalance in the Gerry Anderson universe. Working on a project with a friend in Connecticut, I was surprised to see him post on Facebook recently, I wish I were a spaceman, the fastest guy alive. I discovered a friend from the US whom I had known for 20 years had been a huge Fireball XL5 fan since his childhood in New York. As we're both lovers of the 60s and music from the period, I asked him, as a fellow Small Faces fan, if he was aware that the same team produced a show starring a puppet, Stanley Unwin. Now, The connection there, I think we discussed this before, with the Small Faces was their album Ogden's Nut Gone Flake,
Yes.
which featured dialogue from Stanley Unwin. Anyway, Ian goes on to say that his friend was totally unaware, and I pointed him in the direction of an episode I'd managed to seek out online. He mailed me back filled with praise, so I filled him in on the backstory behind the aborted making of the series. Disappointed he could find no more, I made him a gift of a copy of the DVDs from the Gerry Anderson store, which he then devoured. He's declared this even better than Fireball XL5, Secret Service, I'm guessing, we're talking about here, and has said that despite what Lou Grade might have thought, he is one and American, rather, who definitely not only gets it, but loves it.
Oh, wow,
So
that's
there.
great.
Yeah, Lou Grade. Anyway, he says, hopefully you'll enjoy the sound file, and thank you again for keeping one of the great positive things in my life alive so brilliantly. All the best, Ian Clark. Now, this is rather lovely. Would you like to hear his piano rendition of the theme from UFO?
I would love nothing more than that.
Lovely. Doesn't that sound beautiful?
It's sort of got a soothing vibe
It
to
really
it.
has.
Because obviously
Yeah.
on the original, it's all kind of super hyped up,
Yes.
fast, and so just to hear it a little bit more leisurely, jazzy, it's lovely.
Yeah, very nice. So
Thanks,
if
Ian.
you have any versions of any Gerry Anderson theme that you can play on any instrument, including a chicken, it seems, do send them into
You're still
podcast
going on about that, are you?
at gerryanderson.co.uk. We'll play it next time. Linda got in touch to say, hello, I realised that email was not an option, but I don't have Twitter or Instagram, and I wanted to join in. So here you are, my screenshot of your podcast that she's emailed to us. Yes, I have quite an array of tabs open. Yeah, you certainly do. Busy lady. Usually I do a workout whilst listening, but today I just did the housework. Exciting, huh? I've listened to all your podcasts to date and would say that a search for Candy and Andy brought me here a while back, but actually it was your Gary Newman episode. Well, that's nice, isn't it? People coming to us from all different directions.
Absolutely, and certainly that Gary Newman episode has been extremely popular. So thanks, Gary. And he does occasionally share a link to it, which is always really nice.
Yeah, that is nice. And I think finally, just flipping over my bit of paper, yes, for now, this is Eric, who we've grown to know well over the last few weeks, saying, hello, Richard and Jamie. Thank you for playing out my voice message in Pod 115. Seems a long time ago now, doesn't it? Crumbs. Richard, he says, you asked me what it was like coming into Space 1999 through the audio drama first and the show second. Well, he says, I found Koenig and Russell to be so assertive in the audio drama that I was surprised to see them much more subdued in the TV episode of Breakaway. I kind of wish Russell was a bit more aggressive on TV because she was the doctor, the actual medical expert, and the guys just kind of wanted to treat her like that sort of hysterical woman role. I liked how the Big Finish version of Russell wasn't having any of that. The difference almost felt a bit like Space 1999 and New Space 1999, but similar somehow, catering to a new and more modern audience. Either way, I'd like more of both, please. As for my second episode of Space 1999, well, it was Death's Other Dominion, which I saw with you, Jamie and Ben, as part of the Anderson Insiders. Ah, yes. You were both very early, you were a part of my Space 1999 experience, and it was a wonderful memory. I believe I might even have given you a Captain Scarlet FAB fact. Anyway, I've prattled on long enough, so I'll simply sign off with my normal Forever Anderson bold. And that's from Eric.
Thanks, Eric. Lovely.
That's a couple of interesting points there. It is important to point out, I think, that the audios from Big Finish are not New Space 1999 in the way that perhaps New Captain Scarlet was New Captain Scarlet. It's sort of a continuation, a revisit, a reimagining, I suppose, but all existing within the same universe.
Yes, it is set in 1999 onwards, so it's not like a Space 2099 or whatever it might be. Yeah, it's a reimagining rather than a reboot. I mean, all these terms are sort of
I know, they mean
interchangeable,
nothing really,
aren't they? But yeah.
The question is, do you like it or don't you? That's all you need to know. Don't you?
Totally, you're right.
Yeah.
And most people do like it, which is rather lovely.
Yeah, that's great. And of course, he mentions there the Anderson Insiders there, which is an opportunity to get some extra stuff above and beyond all the freebies, the podcast and the YouTube channel and all the bits and pieces. We have quite some fun over there occasionally, don't we, with our screenings and so on?
We do. We've got another watch along, I think, any day now, actually, haven't we?
Yes,
So,
that's right. And do you know what it is?
It's Joe 90, isn't it?
It is, yeah. That'll be fun.
There you go. So that's a good reason to join, isn't it? Just to watch me be tortured.
Yes, exactly. So do send in your emails to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk, and of course, I'll do my best to read them out next time.
Good. Thank you, Richard, for reading them out.
You're welcome.
Now, is it time for Gerry Anderson news? I've sort of lost track. There's been so much going on.
Yes, that's right. Yes, it's time for the news.
Oh, okay, fine. Well, then let's do that now.
Yep.
Yes, it is the Gerry Anderson news. Go on, Richard James, say it now.
News.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So it's the Gerry Anderson news, of course. There's stuff happening. There always is.
Yes.
Let's start with something First Action Bureau. A new First Action Bureau trailer went live a few days ago with some words of wisdom and some words of preview from some members of the cast. So you can hear from Genevieve and Sasha and Patterson and Nicola talking about their various characters. If you want to listen to that now, just search First Action Bureau on your podcast app of choice, and please do subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. And if you want to jump on things early, if you're very excited about First Action Bureau and you'd love a First Action Bureau t-shirt or mug, then they are now available too from the Gerry Anderson store, or will be very, very shortly. Just pop along there, shop.gerryanderson.co.uk, and search First Action Bureau. While you're there, you may enjoy a release that's coming up later this week. A Standby for Action Stingray t-shirt, one of the few Stingray approvals that we've had through from ITV this year.
Yep.
So if you're a Stingray fan, you will want to stand by for that one.
Yeah.
Space Precinct Demeter City. Oh, yes, it's Richard's book. Well, lots of you have been buying it from Amazon, but I understand there are a few who won't want to buy it from Amazon, and that's absolutely fine. So for those of you who want to get the paperback from the Gerry Anderson store, that will be available at the end of this week as well. And of course, there's the UFO range, which is out last week to celebrate the 50th anniversary of UFO. 50 years. Can't believe it.
Yes.
People still finding it and getting excited about it now. Hopefully, we'll be covering that in an upcoming podcast. But if you fancy a UFO target design, a UFO schematic, or you want to look like you are a member of Harlington Straker Studios, that one's been particularly popular, then pop along and search UFO right now. Don't forget, coming up in the next few weeks, it's the 55th anniversary of Thunderbirds, so there'll be a limited edition Thunderbirds Day t-shirt that will just be available for 5 or 6 days around the anniversary, as we do every year now. It's a great design by Chris Thompson with a clear countdown theme. I think you're going to love it. And we'll also have some new videos and bits and pieces across the Gerry Anderson store. So I've kept that as compact as possible. Hopefully that'll do you for this one. That is the end of this week's Gerry Anderson News.
That was the news. Exciting news.
It's always exciting.
I know, it is, isn't it? Every week. I don't know why I just don't say exciting news every week, because it always is.
Yeah, I don't know either. Anyway, can I just jump in with a quick reminder?
Yeah.
We've said it at the top of this, and you may well have already done it, but if you haven't, then now is a great time to pause this. Well, not yet, actually. Wait until I've said what it is, and then you can pause it and do it. Take a screenshot of you listening to this podcast, then pop over to the First Action Bureau podcast and play the trailer and do a screenshot of that, and then post both screenshots to Twitter and or Instagram with the hashtag Gerry Anderson Podcast, please. And I'll pick one of you in about a week's time to win a bundle of First Action Bureau goodness.
Cool.
So now pause it and do that. Thank you for doing that. They're back now. That's all right.
Good.
And yes, I look forward to seeing your entries and tweets and stuff soon.
Yeah. Now, just before we head on over to hear from Mark Woollard for the final part of his interview with Jamie, I thought we'd head on over to our Facebook group. That's facebook.com/groups/Podsterons, because, Jamie, there's a new sheriff in town. And Louise Everson, yes, who is one of the mods on the page there, asked if you were a character from a Gerry Anderson show, what, or rather who, would you be? Interesting one, isn't it? Kath Baker posted, Captain Magenta is me, just with better pay and a smarter uniform. Neil Holloway said Captain Hansen, as I'd love to fly Fireflash. Paul Mount says stewed apples. I mean, really? Out of all the characters, that's who you'd be.
Each to their own?
Yeah, and finally, Ricky Johnson, Joe 90, he says, imagine being a kid and you're able to go on all those wonderful adventures, fly planes, go into space, take on terrorists, etc. Imagine. So who would you be, Jamie?
Well, I mean, Virgil's always pretty cool, and
yeah,
I know that's an easy answer, but I'm all for easy answers.
Yes,
and you can't say Orin, can you?
No. I think I'd be Lady Penelope, of course. I think. Lovely selection of frocks, all the jewellery.
Yeah,
being
okay.
chauffeured around everywhere. It's right up my street, isn't it?
Yeah, now you said that, I can totally see it.
Yeah. Hugh Moore posted, do any music buffs in this group know which synthesizers Richard Harvey used for the Terrorhawks music between 1983 and 1986? I could have sworn I read somewhere that a Fairlight CMI was used, but I can't be certain. Well, listeners, do you know? Get in touch, podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk, or post it on our Facebook group. Put Hugh out of his misery. And finally,
Richard,
for now, Alan Porter.
I know.
Do you?
Yeah.
Go on. Yes, come on then. Let's hear it.
He dug them out, and they're actually played on the Firestorm theme.
Really?
Yeah, the original one.
That's nice.
So there was a Fairlight, but most of the stuff was done on a Jupiter 8. I believe that's the name. I think at Roland JP8. I hope I've got that correct. But he got it out from his storage thing, set it all up, and it's such a lovely sound. I will try and find some photos of him playing it because he did it live for us in the studio. So
great, there you go, Hugh. Straight from the horse's mouth, if you don't mind me referring to you as such, Jamie. Alan Porter said, I was recently invited on a virtual convention panel to discuss the 35th anniversary of Live Aid. So I've been watching the concert footage, and for the first time, I spotted a flag in the crowd with the Spectrum logo on it and SIG written underneath. Anyone know if there's a story behind it? So I'd like to know, where is the most unlikely place you've ever seen an Anderson reference, or a bit of merch, or a logo, or a saying, or a phrase? We know it crops up all the time on quiz shows and things like that. I'm not talking about that. Where is the most unlikely place that you've seen some sort of Anderson reference? A flag at a concert, or written on a pipeline beside a road? I don't know. Anywhere like that, let us know. podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk, and we'll read them out next time. Yeah.
I've seen a copy of Joe 90 DVD in my bin, I think. That's rather unexpected.
Jamie.
I'm joking, of course. I'd never do that.
Harsh.
I would never, ever do that. No, I quite like the Joe episode from last week, actually. And if you go back and listen to that, then you'll hear me praising its Swiss accents and milk detail.
Now, while we're on the subject, Jamie, how are we getting on with the Thunderbirds bin stickers? Everyone wants to know.
I was just trying to have a glug of coffee there and you maybe spit it out again. Yes, no progress just yet.
Oh, all right. Do keep us informed.
I will definitely do that, no problem.
Great idea, though, isn't it?
Yes, it was certainly an idea.
Well, make your own, take some pictures, send them in. We'd love to see them.
Yes, can't wait to see your various bin stickers, thank you. Now, I was going to say bill stickers there, but it made me think of Dick Spanner, which is perfectly appropriate because we're about to hear from Mark Woollard, aren't we?
We are indeed, yes.
We worked on Dick Spanner and Terrorhawks and a load of adverts with Dad in the late 80s and early 90s, and Space Precinct and New Captain Scarlet, and almost worked on Lavender Castle. Anyway, we're going to hear all about those things in the third and final part of my interview with him. Would you like to hear that?
Yes, please.
Oh, all right then. Here we go. So by this time, you have now done Anderson puppetry and model effects, stop motion, the Space Police, which is a bit of everything, live action, stop motion, puppetry, model effects. You've come through the adverts, and now you've done live action and model effects on Space Precinct. You ticked all the boxes pretty much, except one that would come through in 2005. What about the gap between Precinct and New Scarlet? What was going on there for you?
Well, I nearly did Lavender Castle until it started to go up to Manchester. I had a meeting up there with the guys, and they were really lovely people, but they couldn't pay my fee, which was exorbitant and still has been, obviously. So I didn't end up doing that. It was a bit of a... I'd like to have done that, but it was still nonetheless a great show. But shortly after that, Mark Harris was working on a film called Event Horizon, and they were under the gun. They needed to get a lot of stuff done quick. There wasn't enough drawings coming out of the art department, and so he'd suggested setting up a unit to do the set decorating and prop building, which was going to be kind of like made up of people like myself who had a bit of a sci-fi language, where we could just go and get given a console and it would be dressed by what we thought would look good, and a little bit of steerage from Mark Harris and Michael Lamont to make it look authentic, and then we'd stick it into the set. And we basically went on to doing stuff like that, which was very interesting work. And I worked very closely with Mark then. Got to see him in his full glory, really, because he's a very good art director and very very forward-thinking. We're very methodical. And, he's a very quiet man, but he carries a big stick when he's doing that sort of stuff. He can really carry it. So we got into doing that together, and immediately we finished Event Horizon. Stuart Craig was going to start doing the Avengers film, which was the British Avengers film, not the Marvel Avengers. And he'd just come off of winning another Academy Award for, I think it was his second for something. And he'd seen what we'd done on Event Horizon. He'd asked us to come and work on Avengers. So finished Event Horizon on a Friday and then started on Avengers on the following Monday. And I was kind of running a workshop there. And gradually I got into doing this HOD prop making, set building thing. Again, working with Mark, we did a couple of other films, ended up doing a Bond together, which was The World Is Not Enough. And I continued doing that until I got on to doing the Harry Potter films, which I got called up from Neil Lamont because Stuart Craig was working on those and he wanted the team that he worked with before, I suppose. So then I started working on those with a chap called Pierre Bohanna, who's a very clever, very intelligent, very creative chap who I work for now, who's done all the Potter films. I did about 2 or 3 of them with him. And then around about the third one was when your dad got Scarlet going. And I'd been kind of chomping through doing film work, most of these AAA films, knowing that your dad was trying to get Scarlet off the ground. But it was like Space Precinct. It took 5 years to go from original inception and doing the teaser at MPC and then putting that out into the world and trying to get enough people interested in it to finance it. And
we know very well how long these things take, don't we, Mark?
Absolutely. I mean, the gestation period is just incredible. And that's not counting the 3 years you've had thinking about it and just kind of cobbling it together as a story. And then, so these things are very protracted. But your dad was always tenacious. He'd have this thing, like an arrow to a target. He'd keep going, and he knew that he didn't fail until he stopped, so he just kept on with it. So what I was doing, it took me long to look at the pilot. And first, a little crossover point. When I went along to have a look at the pilot, which he'd done, we went to the viewing theatre in Moving Picture Company. And I was sitting there watching it and thinking, incredible, this is going to be a fantastic thing. And behind me was the guy who'd written the music for it, Crispin Merrill. It was Crispin, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Crispin.
I didn't realise at the time, but the very first piece of work I'd done as a director at the Moving Picture Company, I used a piece of music that he'd written from a library they had, and it was called I can't remember what it's called now, but I just remembered his name from it. So I thought, I use this music, and I must admit I edited it a little bit. Don't tell him, but we used the music for this test piece, and then ended up years later working with him actually on the full show. So it was such an interesting experience to have our paths cross at that point, because again, 5 years later, working on Space Precinct, he was called in to do the music, and he did a fantastic job. His incidental music's brilliant on it. Such an atmospheric thing. But yeah, your dad called me up, or at least Mark Sherwood called me up, who was at the time co-producing with your dad. They got the money in and they were going to start up, and so sent me the first script. I was going to be the third director in the sequence, and there was David Lane, of course, from Thunderbirds fame, was supervising director. Then there was Steve Begg was going to be second, and myself the third. So I had the script. I went along for a meeting with your dad, and then it was we started talking about it, and I was engaged, and we started getting into it. And of course, that was a massive learning curve. But also the most creative period of my life. Really, that was a real joy to work on that. Even though, again, like all productions, it was fraught with such edge of the seat, razor blade decision making sequences of events, and it nearly fell over a couple of times. But your dad was. I remember your dad in the midst of all that when everybody was getting really anxious and the completion bond guarantors had been called in, and your dad was as cool as a cucumber. And I was saying, well, what do you think is going to happen? What do it's because we just the first 2 episodes had been directed by Dave, and they were like a break point. And if the next funding didn't come in, that was the end of it. That was just going to be like a stitched together as a thing. And there's big trouble happening with one of the partners in the show. And I thought the whole thing was ready to collapse because they were running the studio. They had the expertise, and we were basically the production entity that were making the show through them, as it were. Yeah. And your dad, cool as a cucumber, he said, well, first of all, I think this will happen, and I think that will happen with this person here, and then he'll go, and then this person, and then everything he said came to pass. It was like the runes, it wasn't until these dominoes started falling over afterwards I thought, bloody hell, you read that dead straight. It was absolutely exactly what happened. And as history revealed, we got Steve Begg had a friend called Ron Thornton who was his dad brought over, and he was put in charge of the studios, and the previous incumbents were all let go, and he was responsible for saving the show, really, because he made a few decisions over a couple of days and then restructured the whole thing, and then we set it up again. And your dad was always very, very grateful to Ron for what he'd done and how he'd helped turn it around, because without him, I don't think it would have turned around quite as well it had done.
I mean, there's that story which you may have told me, in fact, which is where Ron basically came onto the main floor and basically said, everyone on my right, you stay. Everyone on the left, you're gone. Sorry, your position's terminated. Is that true?
That's true, yeah. He said everybody who knows Lightwave, which is a software product for being CGI, move on to the left-hand side of the studio. Ron was a very big Lightwave. He had a lot of contact with Lightwave, and everybody who doesn't know Lightwave move on to the right-hand side, which duly happened. And he said, all the people on the right-hand side, very sorry, we're all sacked. Everybody on the left-hand side, do you know anybody else who knows Lightwave?
Wow.
It's like, it was a very cool and measured decision, which had to be done with your dad's say-so as well. But it was the only thing that saved the show, because we then changed the pipeline. For people who don't know, the pipeline is the whole structure and sequence of events from the very first, the motion capture through to the texturing and everything else that happens in motion, in CGI. If you dedicate a pipeline to a particular piece of software, if you want to change it halfway through, it's almost impossible. So basically, Ron changed the pipeline on that day and set about changing the course of how we made the show.
Yeah.
It was a thrilling time, even if it was an uncomfortable one. But out of that came, I like to think, some very, very good work. I think what was done in that time by the technicians and the animators and the motion capture artists, the art department, everybody who was involved with that, they really kind of took the game up, I think. And your dad created a new form of hypermarination, and it was in a TV show that hadn't seen the light before. It was a really kind of cutting edge. That's a term often used, but it pushed the outside of that envelope as far as it could be done in that period of time.
Yeah. We all know how fast CGI ages, and a lot of Scarlet still looks fantastic now, even 15 years later.
Yeah. It's a great credit to him. I think that's
absolutely,
and also great sadness. That was
that too, because of all the distribution problems and everything else that came with it. Just briefly, Mark, touching on directing CGI animation. I mean, that I'm guessing a lot of that comes from boarding. Really, a lot of the work is done then. But give me a quick kind of summary process for directing an episode of New Captain Scarlet.
So first of all, you get the script. The script would be broken down into sequences, which would then go to the storyboarders and have a meeting with the storyboard artists and brief them for what was required, act it through. They'd go away and make the storyboards, draw them up. Then we'd take those individual storyboards that had passed muster and start compiling them into an animatic, which is where we take each individual board, and then we'd have I'd record the artist's voice work, which would then be cut into a guide track, and then we'd marry the guide track to the storyboards, which would be like a very loose. This animatic would be like a very loose cartoon, like a static cartoon almost, and it would be something to give us timings so that we'd know approximately how long the show would run and effectively whether the story was working or not. So at that point, when the animatic was done, your dad would come in. He'd either sign it off or he'd send us back to, quote unquote, the drawing board. But most times, more often than not, he would let that go. And we'd go out onto the stage, which was a motion capture stage with our performers, who would then make, we'd kind of set the scene with, instead of having a set in a traditional sense, we'd have a boundary, what they call in the motion capture volume, which is just a big space. We'd put things in the set or the volume that the actors could interact with that wouldn't fudge the eye lines of the cameras that were kind of feeding back the information, because they had these little dots which both take the light off of an emitter and then bounce it back to the camera. And if you put something in front of those dots and the cameras couldn't receive the bounce back like a radar or sonar, then they couldn't interpolate where the character is, where the actor was. So working with the performers, we would play back the guide track, the actor the guide track, and then we'd basically direct them. I'd direct them like you would do if you were directing a stage play, really. Wouldn't really worry about where the cameras are going at that time, because I could be on the floor with them and I could just kind of like see where the action was happening. And it gave a great sense of freedom because you weren't pulled in by having to make those decisions. And then we'd store the data, clean the data, and that would be put into like a grayscale version of the performers, play blasted out, which made you have a little animation, which we could then cut into the timeline on the edit, which, so you'd replace the storyboard with the piece of animated character performance. And then after you've done the cameras on it, so I skipped a bit there, you put the cameras on it, line up the shot you wanted and record it from that angle, and then you'd cut that into the timeline. Then you'd gradually assemble it, and then you'd cut it to a sequence that you thought was good. Then you pass that over to the animation team. They'd go in and they'd start doing all their wizardry on it, putting the textures on it, putting the lip sync on it and the hand movements, until finally it was finished and you could add that into the timeline. And gradually you'd see the timeline going from storyboards to grayscale animatics to full-blown animated footage, and then visual effects being added to it afterwards. So it was very interesting to direct people on set without having to worry about, say, where the cameras were, because it really was like directing a stage play. And then you could pick the best angles with your cameras afterwards in a computer, just say, oh, stop that one here. Or you could repeat the motion, or you could enhance or amplify something that was happening, or you could just downright go straight back in there and animate the whole performance from that actor if you wanted or needed to. So it's a very free way of doing stuff. And it was great. You had a lovely fun doing that. And of course, then you also have like the special effects version of shots where you have like the angels or the craft flying around. That would be done separately by animators, and then you'd incorporate that into the shots that you were going to do live action. And you could effectively put a live action component into the model effects shot, as it were, and it would be seamless. There's no difference. It's not like you had one or the other. The whole thing was all CGI. So it was a very it was a great method for making that kind of show. You could do a kind of like an infinite, cosmic zoom from space into the cockpit of an angel, and the character would be sitting there, and it'd be technically it could be effectively flawless. So it was a great method for making movies. I loved it.
Yeah. I was going to say I get the sense you're quite proud of your stuff on that, Mark.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where when I first the first shot I had on my first episode was, I think it was one of the helicopters taking off. And it was like, well, can I do this? Can I really get the angles out of this? Because it felt unnatural at first and ungainly, because you didn't have a camera, you weren't seeing what you were going to get. And it was gradually built up in layers. And so when I saw that first shot, I thought, okay, yeah, I feel like I can do that. So my opening shot on my first episode, I kind of did a tour de force shot where there's a truck crawling up the side of the Alps. And I started off very close on the back of the truck, which is revealing the name of the company that's kind of runs through the story, and then I do a big pull out to reveal the Alps that it's driving through. And you couldn't have really done that in anything other than a very expensive film for a TV show like that, because it's just such a big swathe of area you had to go across. There's a helicopter shot that started off on the back of a couple of letters on the back of a truck. So that was great to see that and have the compliments I got from that to risk a little bit more and do other stuff. So yeah, it was great to chance your arm.
Too right. And if somebody hasn't seen New Scarlet before, any particular episode, obviously one of yours, that you'd recommend?
Yes, I would. Funnily enough, the episode I liked the most out of all of them was one I was lucky enough to get, written by Phil Ford, which was Touch of the Reaper. One of the reasons I like it so much is it harps back to the original Scarlet. There's a couple of things I put in it, which and he put in it, which I think echoed the original version of Scarlet, and I think it's the first time you hear a disembodied Mistral voice. One of the characters in it was it's about somebody who's mistronized, and they're mistronized inculcating a disease that kills on touch, and effectively the person that passes it on not to the person they want to kill, but somebody, a go-between, who then becomes mistronized and passes it on. So it's quite a nice little who did what in it, and also there's this Mr. and I's voice, and was first time I had an idea of when the Mysterons have been used up, when there's no point in them being around anymore, they haven't fulfilled their purpose, then they just vaporise. Whatever they were is no longer required. Don't keep them hanging around. So there's things like that are in them. But it was a jolly romp. It starts from somebody in a lab, and it ends up with a big kind of road chase, and eventually ends up with Scarlet effectively being nearly killed for one of the few times he's really nearly killed in the new Adventures of Captain Scarlet. He gets touched, and he actually really gets mangled up on the inside, and it's touch and go whether he's going to survive. And there's a line I put in it which goes, when he gets killed, is it, one touch is all it takes to kill you. And he said, well, I've been dead before. I like that line. So I kept that. But I really like that episode because it had a bit of... Actually, the reason why it was one of my last episodes to do, but the reason why we did it that way was because it was one of the first episodes that Phil had written. But it was just... It required so much in terms of assets to make it happen that we had to push it right down the schedule. And it benefited from that because then we could do stuff that we couldn't have otherwise done. But it was a great jolly romp. But there's some great episodes in there. There's I think what's the one Dom did with the thing on the moon, on Mars, the Rat Trap, not Rat Trap.
Surge's Major.
I think it's Rat Trap, isn't it? It's the one.
Right, there is Rat Trap as well with the spinning bodied. That's on our YouTube channel, so people can go watch that for free. And although it's not a Mark Woollard, so obviously it won't be as good.
Well, no, I won't be watching that anyway. I won't watch it. But and there's one Dave did. What was I think it was probably the last one, which was the one where that's right, yeah, it was where we had the other characters coming in who were like a ufologists who were kind of motorbiking UFO fighters who had found a skull, grey skulls. That's what it was called. Thank you, Brain. And one of the reasons I like that as well is one of the characters that was emerging was Captain Oka. But also, by the time we got there, right at the end, we really looked like we were jumping off onto another level of capacity with it. It looked like not only were the stories were really running well and adventurous, but the characters they used a new technique for texturing the characters, and the lighting was looking ever better. So it was like, we were really getting excited about that. And of course, it didn't happen. But
great shame.
Then that's when we started talking about doing Thunderbird CGI and blah, 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 blah. Off it went.
Yeah, there was potential for all sorts, but sadly not much more to be. We'll let you go very shortly, but just before I do, your association with Dad went pretty much up until the end of his life, give or take a bit, because there was a bit of time when he really wasn't seeing anyone. And you worked on a screenplay which has been bouncing around for a while. We'll leave the post his passing stuff for another chat. So just tell me very briefly about the kind of Christmas Miracle process, not so much the story, we don't want to give too much away, but how it came up and what the aspiration was for it.
Well, it was something I think your father had written a while ago, and he had a conversation with Marilyn Goldsworthy, who kind of said, this is quite a good kind of idea. Why don't you do this again? I think it was in the lull bit after trying to get another show off the ground that it kind of nearly went and bit the dust. And so I think he was looking for something maybe what next to do. So he pulled it out and dusted it off and then had another go at it. And it was obviously being called Christmas Miracle. It is based around a Christmas event, but it was being a Gerry Anderson production. There's multi-wheeled vehicles in it and explosions and the threat of mortal death for everybody. But it's a very charming. That makes it sound chintzy and quaint, but it's charming because it's kind of an emotional story, and it's got a lovely heart to it about a young kid and the threat against the world, which brings him together with this character, which changes the ball game, as it were. But it was. I read it and I thought, well, this is a lovely, lovely ending to it, a lovely kind of feel to the whole thing. And your dad asked me about certain things that he wanted to incorporate in it, and so he asked me to add bits in it, and I went and wrote some bits in which he stuck in, and then very much was going to be a CG project with the whole thing being funded at the time by a large multinational supermarket chain.
Bizarrely, yes.
Yeah, and it was sort of an amalgam of all the things your dad had done, the charm of some of his shows, like his early work, which wasn't sci-fi orientated, like Four Feather Falls, that was, was just like great stories, added to big sci-fi adventure and also UFOs, and it kind of squeezed it all into a lovely little package where you could look at it and think, well, there's lovely moments in there. And you even wrote one in there, which was the opening sequence with the Thunderbird 2. It's like little callbacks to stuff that your dad had done in the past. I think it's still a very worthy piece of work, and it deserves coming out. And I think it's really, really. I was obviously, gutted when your dad died, but that obviously kind of stalled that project as well, which was. It would have been a real nice project for your dad to have had under his belt if he'd just had that little bit longer. But yeah, I have high hopes that one day that may come to fruition in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be me involved with it, but just getting it out there would be nice. And I mean, it was just great to be around that and be around him when he was doing that.
Fingers crossed one day. Mark, just to wrap up, because you've given away loads of great stuff that I think that the listeners are going to really love. What is your highlight of all your time working with Dad? You're only allowed one.
New Captain Scarlet. Working all the way through New Captain Scarlet. It was like he allowed me to write, doctor my own scripts. He gave me such creative freedom. More than that, he took a bet on me because he was still, your dad was always good at encouraging, I'm not going to say I'm in this parentheses, but encouraging talent or encouraging what he thought might do well. Partly selfishly on his behalf because he wanted to, have good people around him or people that he could rely on, but partly because he was just of that nature. He was, when we were working at NPC, there'd be a runner on the floor that was working with us on that particular commercial, and he'd turn to me and say, well, what's his name? I say, well, John or whatever. He said, I think he deserves to be encouraged. I'll have a word about, maybe bumping him up. He's always working, always helping people along the path. You ask me, Steve, Mark Harris, Terry Adlam, anybody who's worked with him, I'm pretty sure they'd all say the same thing. He was somebody who definitely helped us along our path, certainly helped me right up until, my last knock-ins with him. He was a good friend to me as well as somebody who employed me. And, I miss him like everybody else does.
What a lovely note to end it on, Mark. I love all the stuff. I've learned some new stuff today, even though we spent a lot of time chatting about the past and all that stuff before. So thank you.
More new stuff.
There will be new stuff. And things like Christmas Miracle, are still very much in play. So fingers crossed. But for now, Mark, thanks. Brilliant.
My pleasure. Good luck.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah,
thanks,
really
Mark.
good.
I mean, he was worried that he gabbled on a bit. And I mean,
no, we like that. We like a bit of gabbling.
That's exactly the point of it, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
also, you get to hear things then, like little bits of information about, lesser known Gerry Anderson projects like Christmas Miracle.
Yeah, I'd never really thought that for many of our guests, this is the only platform they've got where they can talk about certain things in a way, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That's what's so great about it.
Yes.
Christmas Miracle,
Yeah. So, I mean, not a lot we can say about that because it is still an active project.
Is it?
But
well,
Mark,
you said quite a bit there, to be honest.
Oh, I suppose, yeah. Well, we said it. I said it with Mark, and Mark knows that because we'd reworked it, and it's still very much ongoing. But there's some little tidbits there that you may not have been aware of before. If you are an Anderson insider, you will have seen a bit about the Christmas Miracle script on a tour of Dad's office, which I did a few weeks back. So that will be available. Even if you join now, you can still go back and access that and many other lovely videos. So that may be worth a while. And now coming up next week, you'll have to wait and see.
Go on, who?
No, it's a surprise.
Really?
It's a surprise.
Is it? A surprise to who?
All of us. Because it has yet to be recorded, I'll be completely honest, but we are recording a little bit in advance. So that's why. I'm sure it'll be someone fascinating. Or it won't be.
Well, just a minute. When have we ever not had anyone? No, hang on. When have we never had? Oh, anyway. You're listening to the Gerry Anderson podcast. Don't forget you can subscribe to us on whichever channel you're listening to us on. Leave us a nice rating and share us with your friends so they can get to hear us too. Now, you can hashtag us on Twitter, of course, hashtag Gerry Anderson podcast, and you can tag me, Richard N. James, him, I'm Jamie Anderson, and him over there, just wiping his hands on that cloth now, Chris Dalek. Now, for example... Robert Mugg got in touch on Twitter to say, with regards to an underwater episode of Space Precinct. Now, yes, we were talking about this, weren't we? Because a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about underwater scenes
Yes,
being
it
shot
was the
specifically in Stingray,
The
wasn't
opening
it?
of Stingray with Stingray coming
right.
out of the launch tube.
Yes, and you asked if there had ever been a sort of underwater scene during Space Precinct, which there wasn't, but Robert says, with regards to an underwater episode of Space Precinct, there was a concept drawing for an underwater cruiser that was actually produced at the time. And he says the very talented Richard Ashton is currently building a model of it. And he posted some pictures on Twitter. And yes, a lovely modified Space Precinct police cruiser, looking sort of halfway between a space-going vehicle and a sub, with a couple of engines on the back and so on, and
Space
paddles
sub.
and fins and so on. Yeah. So do try and find that. You'll have to search for Robert Monk on Twitter to see it. And I would like to know then, in response to that, how would you go about redesigning a Gerry Anderson vehicle? What would you do? Would you put the fins on the right way round, for example, on the Thunderbird 2? Is that what you'd do?
No,
Or
nobody would
what
do that in their right mind, would they?
Or what would you do to FAB1? Would you make it smaller, chunkier? How would you go about redesigning your very own Gerry Anderson vehicle? Let us know, and we'll share your thoughts next time. Lee over on Twitter says, another quality piece of entertainment as the Troy and Phones of podcasts dive into the world of Gerry Anderson. Dip your toes into the Gerry Anderson podcast on any good podcast service. Thanks, Lee. I'm not entirely sure who's who there.
I was going to say which one's which.
I think it's fairly obvious, isn't it?
Well, we know
And,
that Chris is Oink.
Yes. Who News finally tweeted, one of the most entertaining and enjoyable podcasts out there, like an audio chameleon. It has one eye on the future and the other on the past at the same time. It's clever, isn't it?
Which
I
gives
like
us
that.
a bit of a funny look, I'd say.
It does, really. It explains a lot, doesn't it? So, yes, do get in touch. You can hashtag us Gerry Anderson Podcast, and I'll read out some of your tweets next time.
I can't wait.
No.
And nor can our
Exciting.
listeners. Richard James.
Yes.
We've already mentioned Oink, also known as Chris Dale.
A little unfair, I think.
No. Yes, Chris, I only mean that in the nicest possible way, but if I called
Of
you
course.
Marina, you already work with Marina on the Randomiser, don't you? Which is the thing we're
Yes,
about
that's
to
true.
hear. So
good.
Chris and Marina continue their journey across the Gerry Anderson universe in the hope of avoiding Torchy as much as possible. But let's see what they come up with this week on the Randomiser.
Woohoo!
So that's still the same as it was. It hasn't changed on the outside. Okay, well, that's good. Thank you. Yes. Oh, hello, everyone. Well, as you may remember, last week, the randomizer went up in flames. But you'll be pleased to hear that, thankfully, the main memory core survived intact, so everything's fine. All we had to do was replace the front panel. It's exactly the same as it was before, but while we were making repairs, we also took the opportunity to replace the nuclear reactor with a far less volatile power source. Although I'm not exactly sure what, and... Itstar, what powers it now?
I've come up with a super derivative of trinitrotoluol.
Oh, what?
TNT, like boom.
Oh.
Whatever you do, don't touch it.
Or else...
Bang!
Yeah, I get the idea. Well, I suppose we'd better give it a test run and make a selection.
Of course.
Yeah, so we'll need to find someone to press the button. Now, your Uncle Youngstar's gone missing, I believe, so...
What about me?
No, remember randomizer rules. Nobody gets to press the button more than once, and you have already done it, as I recall.
I didn't. Really, I didn't.
Well, no, I know you didn't. It was him. It was Burlgoy, not you. Goy Burl, is it? Yes, all right, fine. Yes, you press it.
Oh, thank you.
I never could keep track of which was which. You had to have your own way, didn't you?
Applied psychology. Knowing how the other person's mind works. Cute, eh?
I'm not sure that's the word I'd use, but well, at least the randomizer's working again. Okay, well, what are we watching today?
Sugar and spice.
Oh, excellent. I really like that one. Well, here's the Protectors. So it's back to the Protectors, and we begin with a row of little schoolgirls all walking uphill to some very pleasant music, being watched by a couple of very not pleasant fellows.
Is that the contract? That's her.
Yeah, the guy eating the sandwich was an Eagle pilot who got crushed by the space brain. And he and his chum have just left the little place where they were spying on the girls, and now they've gone to the Radcliffe School for Girls in that bright red car. I'm sure they're up to nothing but good. So the girls are going back to the school, and the two men are... Well, they're spying on the girls from a distance, taking photos of them. See, this is perfectly normal. In particular, one little dark-haired girl. This is Vicky. They're getting as close-up photos as they can possibly get. Yep, there she is. But I'm sure there's nothing sinister going on. I mean,
What now?
Make contact, and then wait for an answer.
The answer's no.
Then we do it for real.
oh, yeah, well, maybe it is sinister. Anyway, this is a good time to actually talk about that actress playing the little girl. Her name's Debbie Russ, and she was a child actor at this time. She was in an episode of The Adventurer. She was also a regular on Here Come the Double Deckers. But she is still working to this day. I gather she is a radio announcer for the BBC on Radio 3, Radio 4 and the World Service, which is quite nice because she gives a good performance in this episode, so it's nice she's still working. And over at Harry's place we are we're going through the photos that have been sent in of Vicky.
When did these arrive?
This morning, delivered by hand. Mr. Dukes found them in the office mail.
And the phone call?
30 minutes later. Brief, straight to the point. I have till midday tomorrow to give my answer.
Why your daughter, Sir Gerald?
The Standish Group are about to make a series of international mergers.
You mean takeovers?
There have been several attempts by certain parties to prevent it. If we carry on...
My daughter, Vicky, may die.
Oh, so it's a blackmail thing.
That means she may have to be kept hidden for months.
Only till the end of this week. By then, the first papers will be signed, and nothing can stop us.
Who are they?
All we can tell you is that the men they will hire will be professional.
No doubt the worst gutter scrapings of Androzani Major. Yeah, that's John Normington, who Doctor Who fans will certainly recognise from the Caves of Androzani. It's a shame he's not in this episode more. I think this is his only scene. He's
Can you imagine
assistant to the guy whose daughter is being threatened with death unless his company does or doesn't do or whatever it was.
Very little time to do.
Thank you, Mr. Rule. Total protection for my daughter for 6 days.
And it's a rare occasion for this show that the actual title of the series has any relevance to what they're doing, because they are actually this week protecting little Vicky. They're going to take her out to a place in the country and make sure she doesn't come to any harm.
Of course I don't doubt your qualifications, Mr. Rule. After all, it is Sir Charles' privilege, and he's a very determined man.
Quite so, yes.
Ah, Vicky.
And Harry has chosen to assume the persona of
How do you do?
an Englishman.
Do I have to go? I miss tennis practice and Jane's birthday on Friday.
It's what your father wishes.
Well, if we're going, let's go.
And Paul is the chauffeur. Which was a role I seem to remember he ended up performing a couple of times in this series.
Where's John?
Oh, he's sick, miss.
What's your name?
Paul.
You're new, aren't you?
Yes, just temporary, miss.
I thought you weren't one of my father's drivers.
I said I really like Debbie Russ's performance in this. She's got that air of being a spoiled, well, not spoiled, but pampered child, and yet she's still very likeable. I think it's partly because she doesn't realise the danger she's in throughout all this. Like now they're being followed by the two men in the red car. Tight turn around that corner there.
I'm afraid I misjudged that corner a bit, miss.
You nearly had us over.
Yeah, Harry, if you haven't seen this episode, is made up to look rather nerdy. He's got his black hat on and his glasses, and oh, there's a decoy limo for the guys in the red car to follow. This is all very clever. Ah, with the Contessa in the back. I hope that might be Chino in the front seat, but of course Chino and Suki disappeared for the second series of The Protectors. Oh, and here we are at this lovely farmhouse. And who is guarding the lovely farmhouse?
The place?
But a lovely doggy. Oh, he is so handsome.
The guard dog.
Oh, he's gorgeous. What's his name?
Major, miss.
Oh, beautiful German Shepherd. They are so beautiful. And inside, the Contessa has made herself up as the housekeeper.
Oh, this is Vicky.
Hello. Hello.
This is the housekeeper, Mrs. McGillicuddy.
I'll show you to your room.
And she again has dialed down her usual glamour factor.
Well, I fixed the window in the girls' room, and I've checked all the other fastenings. Listen, we could rig up some alarms.
Yeah, have them go off in the middle of the night. Tough to explain to a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
This is nice.
I think you'll be comfortable.
Ah, but the windows.
These blinds are stuck.
Ah.
And I can't get the window open.
It must be jammed. I'll get Paul to fix it tomorrow.
Major! Hey, Major! I'm coming!
Oh, Major is so gorgeous. But of course she can't go outside.
You can't go outside.
Why not?
Well, we have work to do here.
Yes, Harry is going to be her tutor. But on Vicky's bag, the Contessa has made a little discovery.
You know, that young lady has a mind of her own.
Yes, so we have other problems on our hands. Remember the studs on Vicky's overnight bag?
Yeah.
Well, there was one too many.
Ah, so even though they lost the guys in the red car, they still probably know where they are.
Type. It's got a radius of 10 miles.
So perhaps we've still lost them?
Yeah, maybe we didn't.
And something I like about this as well is not only seeing the Protectors up against the sort of normal class of villain that they would normally face, but they have to do it while protecting a child and contributing equal amounts of energy to maintaining the pretense for her that everything's okay.
So here you all are.
Yes, so here we all are.
What's for supper?
Well, actually, I'm not the cook.
Well, then it must be you, Paul.
Yes, it's Paul.
Now, how did you guess that?
Well, you've got a French name.
What would you like?
Oh, just something simple, please. An omelette.
An omelette? Fine. Any special kind?
Au fins herbe.
Oh.
Au fins herbe.
I'm sure it will be perfect. Daddy says that Mr. Rule always looks after everyone very well.
Oh, dear.
When did he say that?
Just now on the phone. I rang him.
Ah, not good.
I think it's time you and I had a little chat. Shall we go in the living room? All right.
And this is one of those instances where I think we may actually have found a Protectors episode that I can thoroughly recommend.
Have you read them all?
It's not just a good episode. This is actually one of my favourites, and I'm kind of relieved that it's come up because it gives me a chance to actually say, look, here's a genuinely good episode I can recommend without reservation. On the other hand, it means that I've got fewer and fewer of those to come with this series, which is a shame.
Because I thought there was something funny going on.
Funny?
Because this is rather more. It's almost a comedy episode, but it doesn't reach the
what did your father
the sort of full-on comedy antics of things like
And that I was to trust you completely.
King Kong and of course the episode that shall remain nameless.
What? We all have our little ways. Vicky,
Because it's got a more light-hearted air, but it's certainly not even a tongue-in-cheek comedy, because the stakes are very serious.
Oh.
And this little girl doesn't realise at all the danger she's in, because the Protectors have to do such a good job looking after her.
Yes, you should, well...
Because they've come up against gun runners and drug dealers, but they've never had to deal with a slightly inquisitive 9-year-old girl who...
What about Major?
Oh, silly dogs can't get hoof and mouth.
Who just wants to play with the dog.
What do people?
Oh yes, hoof and mouth, that's why she can't go outside.
Told you. Can't go outside.
What are you reading?
A history of Queen Victoria.
You're really serious.
Well, I have a young lady named Vicky who expects to be tutored in the morning. Hence, homework.
You let me know if you hear anything, all right?
Oh, that dog. Oh, that dog is so gorgeous. I love that dog. I just love dogs generally. And this series seems to enjoy dogs as well. I think I've always felt that Robert Vaughan had a bit of a thing for dogs. There are so many behind-the-scenes shots of him with dogs and with puppies
Everything seems quiet.
in this series that I'm sure they put dogs into scripts to make him feel better. Oh, who's that on the phone? It's now night time. Vicky is presumably asleep. So who is making calls? Oh. It's the introduction of the prisoner.
Nothing else?
Are you sure?
What's number 2?
Vicky's father's the only one who knows we're here. Dead.
Uh-oh, we're in trouble.
Well, listen, I don't see what we're worried about. I mean, it stands to reason they're not going to try to kill her.
Well, of course. I mean, then they'd have nothing to bargain with, would they?
Yeah, and they won't snatch her while we're here.
It's true.
Oh, they might do that.
It won't stop them from picking us off.
And I like as well that they haven't got any of their usual gadgets. They've got a couple of guns, and that's about it. So they have to rely on their wits. Again, while not scaring poor old Vicky. So it's now the next morning. Harry's taking a look outside. Everything seems all right. That dog better be okay. If these bad guys do anything to that dog, I will... Oh, Harry takes a moment to straighten the Contessa's little glasses.
It's just the milkman.
It's the milkman. And a cat. Ah, pretty cat. Unless the cat is also in league with the villains.
Why don't we just go out there and get them?
That's what they want us to do, show our faces.
Oh, why don't we just put Vicky in the car and make a break for it?
What if they get a roadblock up? Now, the best thing we can do both for Vicky and for ourselves is stay right where we are. If they want her, let them come to us.
Oh, well, breakfast time. Give the cat some milk here. Oh, little kitty.
Good morning.
No. Well, you're up early.
So are you.
Yes.
I do like the levels to which Harry has gone to create a new persona for himself.
Do that!
He seems genuinely sort of jumpy and twitchy in a way that he doesn't normally.
Migraine headaches.
In addition to the
sunlight makes them worse.
Sort of English tutor persona that he's adopted.
Relax.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Vaughan seems a bit more cheerful than normal this week.
Are you well enough to teach?
Yes, I am, as a matter of fact, right after breakfast.
Uh-oh.
Look.
Oh, no. No, they've done it. They've done it. Oh, no.
No drug.
They knocked out the kitty.
Something's been injected into the milk.
Oh, no. That's the second time in is it 2 weeks or 3 weeks that we've had
Now they're here, why don't we just go and shoot?
things being done to milk bottles in Randomiser episodes, because in Joe 90 Project 90 was that
Time's running out.
last week we had
Check. But don't get heroic.
they had limpet listening devices being attached to the milk bottle. Anyway, we now have a whole band of villains out the front waiting to deal with the protectors.
The reign of Queen Victoria.
One's being sent in with a shotgun.
Queen Victoria.
Yes.
But we're studying European history. To the death of Napoleon. He died 2 years after she was born.
Oh.
Huh. Harry hasn't studied up on that.
Particularly to the battles of Jena, Austerlitz, and...
I like as well, he clearly feels upstaged by the fact that this little girl knows more than he does.
So, now, Napoleon was a Frenchman.
Corsican.
He was also an uncle agent. I knew him fairly well, you know.
He became French.
Yeah, Robert Vaughan talking about...
Do you know Corsica?
Talking about Napoleon is quite something for an uncle fan.
No.
Paris?
As is, I think there's a later episode, Shadbolt, I think, where he gets on a train that departs from Waverley Station.
Now, let's see. Corsica. It's an island, you know.
Yes.
And there are a lot of bad men living there at the present time.
Oh.
As a matter of fact, a good deal worse than in Napoleon's time.
I've killed several of them, Vicky.
Well, you see, they carry big guns and
They have very bad 70s hairdos and lots of cravats.
You know that?
No.
Oh.
So we've sent... Oh, Major's raised the alarm. There's a guy coming up with a shotgun. He's getting even closer, heading for the back door, but Paul has seen him.
In the orchard.
Well, back to work.
So Harry's looking after Vicky.
Somebody out there with a shotgun.
Alone?
Yeah. Probably checking on whether the drugged milk worked or not.
Perhaps we should let him think it did.
Oh, Major's doing such a great job. And our little thug friend with the gun is, he's found the Contessa has fallen unconscious. Or at least she's pretending to be, but she's positioned herself under the table. I'm not quite sure why, but anyway. Uh-oh. So the bad man has walked in.
Hopkins. No rabbits again today?
And Paul has immediately walked in behind him, put a pistol in his back.
What are you doing under there?
I was looking for my thimble.
Have I mentioned I love this episode? I love this episode. It may be why I'm not saying much, because this is genuinely one I really look forward to seeing.
Come, Vicky.
It's such a unique little setup for
It was filled with spies in Napoleon's time, just like it is today.
a rather gentle, sweet story.
You know that, Jones?
That doesn't fatally undermine the entire series with its attempts at comedy, unlike certain other episodes we won't name.
Where are you going? I have some arrangements to make.
Because despite all the lightheartedness, we do still have a band of murderous men out the front waiting to kill our heroes. What have the villains brought up now? They've got a ladder.
Where are you going?
We have a ladder.
To the larder. I'm thirsty.
I'll get it for you.
Lemonade fizzy, please.
Right.
And they're now trying to keep her out of the kitchen, because in the larder we have the man with the shotgun tied up. He's not unconscious, he's not even gagged, he's just looking very cross. He's just looking a bit miffed that he got caught. And now it's time for bed.
Mr. Rule, I've been thinking, if the fur trapper hadn't found the French soldier in the snow, he'd have lost his feet and fingers, wouldn't he?
It's very possible.
Some very nice music in this episode. I don't think any of it was composed specifically for this story.
You make it sound so real, as though it had happened to you.
No. All from books.
It's much more interesting than stuffy old dates. I mean, you didn't give me one single date.
That's just my personal method. Now, come on. You must get some sleep.
Good night, Mr. Rule.
So despite not being trained as a teacher or a tutor at all, Harry is actually getting through to Vicky in a way that she's enjoying. And now she's safely tucked up in bed.
How goes the watch, Jeeves?
Fine. How's the girl?
Asleep.
Good.
They're coming in with a ladder. Major is once again doing a sterling job. They had better leave him alone. Oh no! They've got some meat, probably drugged. Oh. Because as good as Major is, you know, give a dog some meat, and he's your friend for life. And now that the alarm has gone out, the baddies can get even closer. Oh! We had a sneak up. The cat snuck up on us there. Whew, that was close. As the last time Paul got that close to a cat, it nearly set off a bomb in. Was it the episode Triple Cross? He was tied up in a basement with a bomb, and a cat came in and started playing with it. Oh, Major has been knocked out. Oh, Major. Uh-oh, here they come. And this fight scene, again, it's got the comedy music with it. And I think this is definitely music that was heard in, it could be practically anywhere on the island where they're having that interminable fight around the swimming pool. But this is a rather intense fight despite the music. And there's some really good, like, being flipped over, you know, people being thrown over tables. It's wonderfully choreographed as well, because people are like, there's another guy just falling in through a front window. Yeah, people are like grabbing one person, throwing them towards another, and you know, it's so fluid. And yeah, the noise has woken Vicky up, and fall down the stairs. That looks so painful. But I think we've dealt with all of the baddies.
What's all the noise?
No, it's all right. Don't worry. Just that Mr. Rule fell down the stairs.
It's all right.
I love that explanation as well. It's like considering that was the noise of like an entire army invading and smashing the house, including at least 2 broken windows. But it's okay. Harry just fell down the stairs. And now we've presumably stuffed all the villains in the larder. It's the next morning. Everything's okay.
How about a little walk before breakfast?
The cat's fine.
I thought we couldn't go out.
Oh, no, the quarantine's over.
He's playing indoor golf with Harry and Paul.
Can we really go?
Have I ever lied to you?
And she nods. Oh.
On a Wednesday morning?
Before breakfast?
And this is just so charming way to end the episode.
Are you an American?
Going out for a walk, everyone's sort of dropped their disguises, and we end with Harry and Vicky and Major just walking along a country lane. And she's skipping along, and he's got his little walking stick, and Major's tearing ahead, and it's just, I love that one. And I can, having looked at it again, I can say I would thoroughly recommend that episode to anyone who's on the fence about the Protectors. Again, it's not a hugely, typical example of the show, but it's, I think it shows off a lot of the strengths, the characters, the performances. There's just a nice change of pace, nice air of fun about this one, and I've always really liked it. One of my faves from the Protectors.
The Protectors.
Yeah.
Here he goes.
I'm not going to do it, don't worry. No.
Okay.
But interesting, though, child actor who has a career still. That sounds terribly cruel. But no, because we have tried before, haven't we, to track down Len Jones, who played Joe 90, who seems to have sort of disappeared.
Yes, I see.
And then Kate Levy, who was in The Day After Tomorrow. Well, she's still around, but she's not acting anymore. She
Nick
runs
Klein.
a company. Yes, Nick Klein, who's a monk. Isn't he?
Yeah. I don't. Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Maybe. Yes.
Anyway, so the little girl from the Protectors there is working for the World Service, doing announcing BBC Radio 3
Is she?
stuff. Yes.
Oh, that's nice. What's her name? Do you know? Or
I've forgotten. Chris did say it just then, but I got distracted by the Protectors.
Yeah. Yes. Well, as you do. Yeah. I mean, it's an odd one, isn't it? It doesn't. I know why it's there, of course, because it's got Gerry Anderson's name in there somewhere, but it's a bit of an outlier, isn't it?
It's The Protectors produced by Gerry Anderson, not Gerry Anderson's The Protectors, that's the big difference, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it is a big difference as well, I think.
Well, preformed, and that's just The Protectors, isn't it? Anyway, let's hope for something more Gerry Anderson-y next week from the Randomiser.
Let's hope for some Space Precinct. That's what you mean.
Yes,
that's what you want to say.
Let's hope for that. But thank you, Chris. We appreciate your efforts, even when it is The Protectors.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing more about Space Precinct next week.
All right, Richard, Blumeneck.
What? Hey?
We'll get there, yes. Now, look, final call for your chance to win a First Action Bureau goodie bag / box. Screenshot this podcast, go across to the First Action Bureau podcast and screenshot yourself playing the trailer, and then tweet about it or Instagram about it with the hashtag Gerry Anderson podcast, and I will pick a winner, I think on the 1st of October.
Oh, okay. Great.
So please go and do that. Good luck. And it'll be a nice goodie bag with all sorts of stuff, probably including a poster and a T-shirt and a cap and some other bits and pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you'll be one of the first to have any First Action Bureau goodies. So,
how exciting! Now, but by the time we next meet, will the first episode be available? No, still not quite.
Next time it'll be the Monday before, and then it's on the Thursday that it's out.
All right.
So, but maybe we could have the first episode as a preview or something if we're really feeling kind.
Okay.
Maybe not. Let's see. Maybe not. Maybe a bit more of an interview or something with somebody from the show.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Great.
But it's all coming very, very soon. So the wait is almost over.
Yes, it is.
Although, of course, Richard, as we know from the trailer, nothing is true.
You're right.
That will make sense in due course, won't it?
I hope so.
Yeah, me too. Otherwise, we've really messed it up.
Yeah.
So that's the end of this, isn't it?
Yes.
Ernie's just come back in through the cat flap, so that must mean it's time to feed him or something, and time to wrap this up. I'm just finishing the end of my coffee. Let me just pour.
Great.
That's the end of the pot.
Oh, you spilt some there. Careful.
Oh, it's all right.
You're dribbling it all down your shirt. Goodness sake.
That's
some
why.
decorum.
That's why I have to wear my First Action Bureau bib. Now,
great.
Please make sure you have rated and reviewed us and all that good stuff. Shall we just have a quick look at some recent reviews, Richard?
Oh, go on then. I always find this exciting. Yeah,
maybe read one out.
Yes, read one out.
Hang on, I'm just scrolling down to here we go. When's this from? Oh,
is it recent?
Well, not that recent, but
I mean, we've been going a while.
Yeah, I'm just going to scroll down and do a slightly older one out of interest.
Okay. Yes.
Well, here we go. Here's one from Bowshaw88.
Okay.
5 stars.
Oh, really?
Great show for fans and newbies alike.
Ah,
that's nice, isn't it?
That is nice. That's good. Yeah.
There you go.
Short but sweet.
Another one from Becca 008. Truly fab podcast, she says. This podcast is a must-listen if you're a fan of all things Super Mario Nation, hosted by Jerry's son Jamie and Space Precinct star Richard James, who is also a talented actor, playwright and author.
No, please. No, that's... No.
Together through fun segments like FAB Facts and incredible guest interviews, they discuss all things Gerry Anderson. Their rapport is easygoing and accessible. Listening along is like chatting about various Gerry Anderson shows with your friends. If you grew up in the 50s or 60s with shows such as Thunderbird, Stingray and Captain Scarlet, or even if, like me, you grew up in the 90s with reruns of these classic shows, then this is the podcast for you. SIGPWORFAB.
That's great. Thanks, Becca. That's exactly the wording that I used in my email to you to post so brilliant. Well done.
Who is also a talented actor, playwright and author.
Exactly.
That's your your new Twitter biography there. Right. Please do leave us a review and do all that screenshotting stuff if you want to win a Fab prize pack, literally Fab.
Yep.
And should we go away until pod 120, isn't it?
Let's go away. Yes, and we'll see you the next time.
I'm going to finish my coffee. Okay. Bye, everyone.
All
Bye.
Right.
Bye.
Careful now. Careful. Oh. God.
Stage 1 complete.
Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
Right. I've got to go and change my T-shirt, obviously, now it's covered in coffee.
Yes, you have. Look at the state of you.
Disgusting. Anyway, and what's ahead for you today?
Well, do you know what? I've got to go to home base and buy a square of perspex to put over a hole in our hall. There. You did ask.
That was unexpected. I really was not expecting you to give me that sort of information.
Oh, yeah. It's all go here. Yeah.
Right. Well,
I'm not going to tell you any more than that. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. Why does it have to be perspex? That's the only thing I want to know.
So you can see through it.
You want to see through a hole in your wall?
Well, okay. So you want the detail. Well, we've got a little skylight in our hall. Okay.
Yeah.
But we've not been in this house very long, as you may know. And we've discovered that skylight isn't actually attached to the ceiling. So there's a gap where the outside world can get in, essentially.
Right.
And, of course, it makes it a little bit chilly, particularly, as the cooler weather is on its way. So our thought is to get a little square of perspex and just put it on the ceiling and stick it around, seal it around the skylight there to stop the cold air coming in. That's all.
I mean, but you basically say you've got a hole in your roof.
Essentially, yes.
Well,
they didn't pick it up in the survey.
About water and stuff?
No. There's a kind of a lip system going on, so the water doesn't get in, but the cold air does.
Right. I mean, this is fascinating stuff. This is the stuff that the Gerry Anderson podcast is really about.
I can't believe we've tagged it on. This should be right at the front. It's at the very end. Well, this should be in the news.
We can edit this into the news. So
I think you should.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll think about that. Anyway, look, good luck with your perspex buying.
Thanks. I'll obviously keep you informed, let you know how I go.
Yeah, and stay warm. Make sure you wrap up. Wear your extra long Tom Baker scarf.
I will, again.
Perfect. Right. Good luck, and see you next week.
Bye.
Goodbye.
You have been listening to the Gerry Anderson podcast. Wasn't it fun?
You have been listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.